Again.
Are live.
Thank God, everything is becoming live. All right, so let us begin.
Right.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Oxygen for the Soul. We are moving from our Friday time to our Thursday time. If you're watching this wherever you are later, I hope that this gives you more time to go through some of the content. I've decided that, like when I was doing this originally, the idea behind the class was to give some short ideas before Shabbat to kind of inspire you to share things with your family or friends or just for yourself. But now that we're moving to Thursday and you have more time to absorb what I'm going to share, I'm going to start giving you classes that are a bit more elaborate than a quick Dvar Torah, because you can find those all over the place. What I want to do is like a more elaborate talk on Thursday, where we do like a broader look at the whole entire parasha, and then give you like a quick 2-minute kind of Dvar Torah on Fridays, that you'll get so that you have something to discuss at your actual table. All right, Parashat Vayera. I've been out for quite some time. I am back, and I'm excited to be back. And this is going to be an amazing year of class and opportunity. And a lot of what I was doing up until now has been only online. And the goal is to move everything that I've been doing in person, so that I actually get to meet people in person and build those relationships. So God willing, you can join us for coffee talk on Wednesdays. It used to be streamed live. It is no longer streamed live. Now you're just getting the recording. If you want, you could come and join us. It's open to both men and women on Wednesdays at noon. Vayera elav Hashem be'elonei mamre. Right? We're continuing from this parsha. It's a continuation of last week's parshat Lech Lecha. Let's just go over last week very quickly. Abraham is tested. Lech Lecha me'atzecha. He goes. He leaves. He's got some drama there with his nephew. They split up. They go. There's a war, a massive battle between the 4 kings and the 5 kings. Lot gets captured. Abraham has to enter the war. He ends up saving Lot, and they still end up going their separate ways. And God tells Abraham that he's going to be rewarded with a son, and Sarah will give birth to a baby boy named Yitzchak. And that he's got to go through this thing called a Brit Milah. There's a little bit of drama with Ishmael and Hagar and Sarah. But God says, Shema b'kol ishtecha. This is a great rewarding for all the gentlemen listening to this. Torah says that there's wisdom in listening to women, and that there's a certain koach, a certain power of divinity that comes from their voice, and therefore whatever a woman says on some level, this is in the context of marriage, of course, there is a lot of depth to it, so listen and pay attention. And then God says, you got to go through the circumcision, and Abraham does it. He's 99 years old, and he circumcised himself. And this is the 3rd day of his circumcision. Vayera elav Hashem. And God appears to him, be'elonei mamre. The question is, why does the Torah need to tell me where he was? Like, just tell me that you appeared to him. They say that the reason why God is the fields of Mamre were mentioned because Mamre is the one that helped him come up with the medical procedure to actually do the circumcision. And Abraham is sitting there at the entrance of his tent. Like, imagine an old man after surgery sitting outside the front of his porch. Old man Abraham is sitting there. It's hot. There's no air conditioning. He's in the desert. It's hot, and he's sitting there. But God appears to him. Now imagine you're there. There's 2 ways of thinking of this. Okay, on the one perspective, it's you talking to God. You are sitting there. You had a surgery. You're tired, and God comes down and boom, He's right there. And He's talking to you. Okay, so if you had this moment where you were alone with the Almighty, what would you do? How focused would you be on the conversation? How much attention would you give to the Almighty in that moment? Right? He would be. You would give 100% of your focus to everything that God is saying, right? But that's not what happens. Vayare elav. God appears to Abraham, and the next verse says, "Vayisa einav." He turns his eyes. Vayira v'hine shlosh anashim nitzavim alav. He sees there are 3 people that are approaching him. Vayar vayaratz likrotam. He gets up, he sees them, he runs to greet them. He petach oel v'yishtachav, and he bows down to the ground. So we just thought of it from Abraham and him looking at God. And let's look at it from the other perspective. Let's look at it from the perspective of these people walking by. Imagine for a moment, you're in the desert walking with your friend. And it's hot, and you want some water. And you see an old man running towards you. And he stumbles and he falls. And he goes, please, please, come to my tent. I'm going to give you water. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was thinking it from their perspective, I'd be like, no, thank you, I'm not interested. Because that's the beginning of a horror film. Some old man in the desert saying, oh, please, come to my hut and I'll give you some water and I'll clothe you and take care of you. That's like a recipe for disaster. I would definitely not take the offer, but these were angels that were, concealing their identity at this point, and Abraham greets them. Now, let's deal with the question. Okay, I call this talk God versus man, because I believe that is the theme of the whole entire parasha. Proud Zionist Natalie, or just Natalie, I appreciate all the comments. I'm going to read them as we move on. Mazal tov to you and your family. Okay, fine. So you have a Avraham who is ignoring God, and who would much rather be proactively involving himself in helping strangers outside. Now, is this in this ideology of Avraham? Is it in line with Jewish thinking? Like, is this religious behavior, like ignoring God? Isn't everything we do in Judaism about God? And yet over here, Avraham is just completely ignoring the Almighty, right? Right, so it's true that Kama Gedolah, right? How much greater is a person, right? But it's more than that. Meaning, I would say that everything we do, every mitzvah, is about us connecting to the Almighty. But here, Avraham says, "No, I'm going to go ahead and serve man." So I think we could all agree that, of course, at the core, that was then. It's the same today. The same is true today. That even though we have a mitzvah we involve ourselves in the mitzvot, we still have a mitzvah of v'ahavta l'recha kamocha. We have a mitzvah of caring for humanity. And what we're saying over here is that when we talk about the mitzvah of hachnasat orchim over here, like Hannah is saying, that supersedes our relationship with God. I agree with that. I have no problem with that. That, of course, that ultimately the whole message, I'll double click on that and explain it, but the whole message of the Torah is to care for humanity, of course, and that ultimately we care for humanity is more important than our care for God. God doesn't need my help, but you, my friends, our friends, the people around us, they actually can enjoy or benefit from our service. So of course that comes first. Okay? Now, let's say it like this. I get that, okay? 100%. Helping people is great. But why was Avraham not focusing on God? Isn't that rude? Imagine for a moment, I'm talking to you like this. We're having a conversation, okay? And instead of me keeping my eyes on you, instead, what do? I'm looking over there. I'm not looking at you. I'm looking out. I'm looking in the distance. I'm not even looking at you. What was wrong with Avraham? He had ADD. He couldn't sit there and talk to God for a few minutes. He was looking outside and finding, people traveling by. So like this. I think the answer is like this. What was Abraham's greatest discovery? What makes him more unique than everyone else that came before him? Right? There were people before Abraham that knew about God. Noah certainly knew about God. Shem and Ever, the sons of Noah, knew about God. You have Methuselah knew about God. Hey Beryl, you had Adam and his children. They all knew about God. So what makes Abraham so special? What makes him so unique? Who cares about the things that he's doing? Does it really matter that Abraham discovered God when people knew about God before? So the answer to that is, he discovered God on his own. He didn't have a Mesorah. He did not have a tradition. And the fact that Abraham is able to discover God on his own is special. And that's what makes him the father of the Jewish people. 3 billion people today, 2021, believe that Abraham is the founder of their faith. He did something amazing, right? There are very few people in history that we could look back at and say he's impacted so many people. And alive today, almost half of planet Earth, recognizes that Abraham is the patriarch, the founder of their ideas that they celebrate. That's powerful. What did he discover exactly? Was it just that there was a God? People believed in all kinds of gods back then. What was his massive eureka moment? What changed everything about Abraham's life? And that changed not only his life, but the world, the future, the history of mankind would change because of him. Listen very carefully. I'm going to lean into this. Okay? Ready? Abraham discovers not that there's a God. Everyone knew there was a God. But what he discovered is that there is God in man. That you, my friends, are godly. That there's godliness in every single human being. That you were created b'tselem Elokim, and there's something beautiful about you, irrespective of what we see on the outside. But between you, at the inner part of who you are, there's something unique there and beautiful. And therefore, on some level, Abraham discovers God via the echo of his image, the reflection of his image. Where does he see God? He sees God in you. He sees God reflected in mankind. So he could either have this direct encounter, which he has over here, but he's uncomfortable with that encounter, which is why he's looking at. Why is he uncomfortable? Like who would be uncomfortable talking to their father, the guy who knows them better than anyone else? I have so many questions for God. I can't wait to meet the guy. I mean, I'm not rushing. I want to live 120 years. We say Yafeh Sha'achat Ba'olam Hazeh Mikol Olam Haba. Welcome, Joe and the Camping Co. We say Yafeh Sha'achat Ba'olam Hazeh Mikol Olam Haba. That one moment in this world is greater than all of eternity. So of course, it's all about being here right now and connecting to the Almighty. But the way in which we do it, Abraham discovered, is recognizing that each human being is an expression of godliness. And therefore, the way in which I can go ahead and connect to God and bring godliness into the world is by serving the people around him. So he became the massive advocate for chesed. He's running around saying, chesed people, chesed, 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 chesed. And what does it say about our generation? When we hear about a man who wants to serve you in the desert and care for you and protect you and give you shelter and water, and we're like, whoa, you're a psychopath. You might kill me later. I don't know. I don't trust you. What does that say about us? That we live in a reality where we don't even trust the people around us anymore. We don't even want to see the good in other people anymore. Our natural desire, our natural inclination is to be suspect of a person's offering us to help us and so on and so forth. I don't want to be around that person. The perasha is teaching us a very profound lesson. The first lesson is that you have God versus man. Man wins. Okay? When we have a responsibility of caring for a people or God, he wins. I'll prove it to you. Right? We say like this. There's a Gemara in Sanhedrin that says that where the students of Rabbi Eliezer ask him, Ma'ikra, what's going to happen in the end of time? How is a human being, what should we do? What can one do to protect themselves from the ikvat Mashiach, the foot pains, the birth pains of Mashiach? So he says there's only 2 things you can do. There's 2 things you can do. One, Talmud Torah, right? You got to learn. And the second, Gemilat Chasadim. Now, you have to remember, whatever the Gemara says, Talmud Torah, Gemilat Chasadim, right? We know that Talmud Torah, the learning of Torah, has to lead to action. And therefore, the reason why I want you to learn is because we believe that the learning itself will lead you to become an activist. But if your learning does not lead to any kind of action, it's inaction. And all you're doing is just learning, and the learning itself doesn't move you and push you and inspire you. You've missed out on the whole entire purpose of the learning itself. And therefore, they're always tying them together. Talmud Torah, Gmil Chasadim, Gomel Chasadim. You got to be a proactive person that's going out and running to do good. It's not enough just to learn. You got to go out and do something. And he's teaching us this, Abraham. Maseh avot siman labanim. You have an opportunity right there in front of you to open up a book and read, or go out and help the old guy cross the street. What do you got to do? What do you got to do? What do you do? So it depends on the person. But I would say most people, my friends today, especially in our generation, we have an obligation to go out and help the old guy. If our religion turns us to people that just sit and meditate and go, we've lost the message. That's not Judaism. Judaism is about living a passionate, fiery life of an activist's life. Go out and stop the insanity. Do something, protest something. I asked my students the following question. I asked them, I say, what's your issue? Like, what questions are you dealing with? Because if you have no questions, if there's nothing bothering you, if there's nothing that you're fighting, if there's nothing that's truly bothering you, then you're not thinking. A thinking person has issues. A thinking person has questions. A thinking person is someone who is constantly going and looking to unravel something new. If you don't have issues, you don't have questions, my friends, you may be part of the zombie apocalypse, and it's time to wake up. Not enough. You can't live through a zombie apocalypse anymore. You got to wake up. You got to be more. You got to be. No, don't be afraid to ask the question. Ask the question. The question is more important than anything. And don't worry about the answer. I don't care about the answers. First, learn to question everything. The answers will come in time. God says to Abraham. Now listen to this. Pasuk continues. Vayomer, and Abraham says, Adoni, imna matzati chen be'einecha, al na tavor ma'avdecha. My master, please, if you find favor before your eyes, don't leave me right now. Who's he talking to? Okay, so he sees the people, he's running after them, and now he's saying, please don't leave, stay. What does Rashi tell us? Rashi tells us over here that, where's that Rashi? Rashi Gimel, Vayomer Adoni imna, he says, who's he talking to them? He gives two explanations. One is the gadol shebehem. He's talking to the actual individual. But davar acher, he gives another, the greatest of the three people that were there. Another explanation is, he says to God, wait. I'm putting you on hold. I love that answer. I love the idea of Avram saying, God, wait. Now, let me ask you this, okay? I'm a parent. And some people here are going to listen to this. You have children, and you call your kid, and you want to talk to your kid. You haven't spoken to them in a while. You call your kid, and you're FaceTiming them, and your son or daughter says, "Listen, Ma, Dad, I can't talk to you right now. I gotta go. I gotta help this other person. I gotta talk to my other sibling right now. They need me." Would you be insulted that your kid didn't talk to you? That they went ahead and they're helping somebody else that moment? No. As a parent, you'll be so happy knowing that your kid is helping your other kid, or that your kid is helping some other person. Why? Because you know that your child is emulating all of your best traits. And we get nachat and simcha from seeing our children do the right thing. So God is not saying, oh, I can't believe you put me on hold. God is dancing in heaven when he sees us doing what we meant to be doing. Abraham is in pain. This is the third day of circumcision. And he's so uncomfortable taking from God that he looks for an opportunity to help the other people. God creates the opportunity for him. But makom shadam rotzeh lelech molichin oto, in the direction a person wants to go, we escort him there. Abraham's whole life, his existence, was how can I serve and help the people around me? How can I give to those people that are in need? He's not dissing God. He's becoming like God. He's becoming godly by helping the people around him. This is how we become like God. He's helping the people around him, and he's becoming godly because he sees the opportunity of bringing out the Tzelem Elokim in each individual. He goes ahead and continues, tells us, Yikuch Na'mad Mayim, take some water, wash your feet. He settles them down. The Midrashim tell us the three things that he gives them, the water, the food, and the shelter. Later, that merit translates to the three miracles that happened to the Jewish people in the desert: the cloud of glory, the fire, the water, Be'er Miriam, and the man were all in the Sut Abraham over here. Now, he gives them some water, he gives them food, and so on and so forth. Okay? I want to skip through this. I want to get to this one other part. There's two more parts I want to share with you. Vayomeru Elav, these individuals say to Abraham, Aye Sarah Ishtecha, Where's your wife? Sarah, right? Vayomer hinei ba'ohel. She's in the tent. Now, why are they asking? It's a strange question. Back then they were living in these nomadic tribes. Men and women were very separate, and Sarah was in the girls' tent, and now they're talking about like, where's your wife? How do you even know her name? So these are malachim. These are special, not just regular individuals. These are special malachim, and they're asking where's Sarah. So what does Rashi say over here? He says, why are they asking? They're asking because they want to impress upon Abraham that she's a tznu'ah. They're complimenting Abraham, the fact that Sarah is not there. Right? The whole perasha that we're going to read today is about our responsibility to give back to humanity. The easiest thing we could give to people around us is a compliment, a nice word. You look really pretty today. You look really good. Mariga on the call today, she says, Rabbi, you got rosy cheeks. Make me feel good. I finally got some. I got some color. I got some color. But the little things that we say to the people around us. You look great. I'm looking forward. I miss you. Those things, they add so much power and value. We change people. We change the future by giving people compliments. And over here, the Malachim are teaching us and Abraham, hey, your wife Sarah, she's tznuah. She's beautiful. She's not here right now because she's tznuah. You should take pride in that. Not giving criticism to him, but just telling him, wow, like you're so lucky you're married to this amazing woman. Okay, then they tell him about the fact that they're going to have a child, and Yitzchak. That's a whole fascinating conversation, but I don't want to get into it. And then later on, after this whole entire thing happens, and he finds out that the Sodom is going to be destroyed, we know there's a massive back and forth. Abraham talking to God, no, save the people, 50 tzaddikim, 40 tzaddikim, 10 tzaddikim, and so on and so forth. And this is the same exact theme of man feeling a sense of responsibility for humanity. Do you feel like you have an achrayut, an obligation to help the person next to you? Do you feel that way? Do you feel when you see people out in the street, people in your community? Okay, that's too hard. Get it. But what about the people in your home, the people on your block, the people that live next door to you? Do you feel an obligation to help them? Are you moved by or looking for opportunities to do something pleasant for them? The people in your synagogue, people in your community? Do you feel moved? I gotta say, there's so many people with COVID right now. I have someone in the community who's in ICU. She should have a refuah shlema. But like we're talking about individuals who are. She's in ICU, which means her family can't see her. Her family can't help her. The community can't come and be there to cheer her up and to bring gifts, and she's isolated. COVID ICU means zero gift. You could see your family member through a glass window. People are in pain today. What are we doing to help those people? What are we doing? There's so much opportunity today. We live in such a majnun world. The world's so crazy, right? Masking. You know how many phone calls I got from people today and yesterday asking me to write them religious exemption letters because they don't want to get a vaccine. They're going to lose their jobs if they don't get one. Crazy times. So at the very least that we can do is help people. Give them a nice word. Be mindful of them. Allow yourself to feel moved. People are in pain. What we can do, if you want to ask me how we can be more Jewish, what we can do to the people, help the people around us to feel a connection to their Yahadut, to their religion, what we can do for ourselves to become more godly, is live a life of Abraham. At the very least, see the beauty that every single person has in them. Recognize that every human being is a reflection of the divine. They are godly. The people around you are Tselem Elokim. We have an obligation to help humanity. You want to understand why Abraham's message is still so strong today, and why we read about Lot, who had the exact opposite philosophy. Lot is serving his malachim, and he's ready to go ahead and give up his children to the mob. He's ready to go ahead and have his daughters be raped by the mob so he could do his chesed. That's a perversion of religiosity, a perversion of chesed. There are boundaries. Our obligation is to have a moral clarity when it comes to understanding who it is we're supposed to serve. How are we clarifying that for ourselves? Lot is disturbing the whole story about Lot. He did not value his own daughters, and the irony is that the daughters didn't value him because they went ahead and they raped him. And they had children from their own father. The perasha is teaching us the power of having moral clarity. And moral clarity begins with recognizing that every single human being has value. I believe that's what the founding forefathers of America believed in. That all man is created equal under God. That is the principle. They got that from whom? From Abraham, from Abraham. You want to go ahead and and internalize the message of the parasha. Do you feel a burning responsibility to care for humanity? Oh, I can't do that. Okay, I got it. It's too much, Rabbi. I'm not outgoing. I'm more introverted. I'm not extroverted. Okay, great. What are you doing to bring happiness to the world around you? How many people are you smiling at? How many people are you helping? How many people are you thinking about what can I do to help that person? My friends, wake up. Time isn't infinite. This existence is finite. Stop worrying about what was. Stop thinking about what's going to be, and start thinking about what you can do right now at this moment. Not to, I listened to the shiur, I'm good today, Rabbi, thank you so much. Now I'm going back to Amazon.com, and I got to make my orders, I got to go shopping, I got to this, I got to that. Do that. But it can't be at the expense of being so distracted that you don't have time to think about the people around you. The parasha is a criticism on those people that use religiosity to ignore humanity. I'm going to end with the story. I love telling the story. I heard the story from Rabbi Lawrence Kellman, my rabbi, and he's one of my rabbis. And he had at a Shabbat table, I've told the story before, but it's definitely worth repeating in the context of this parasha. He had a woman at his house for the meal, the Shabbat meal, Friday night meal, and she was a Holocaust survivor. She was a twin. Her sister was murdered, and she was one of Dr. Mengele's experiments. And when the freedom fighters found her in Germany, there was so little of her left because of all the experiments. They asked her where she wanted to die. Where do you want to go? She was emaciated, sick. She was people that when the freedom fighters came in and they freed all the survivors. There's some people just didn't make it. And they saw her like, you're not going to make it. But she wanted to go to Israel. They took her to Israel, to Palestine, and the doctors there did miracles, and she survived. She could never have children, but she survived. And at the same table was about Shuvah, someone who grew up not religious, someone who had a very colorful history, past. He was very involved in Buddhism and meditation, and he had just become more observant, and he was at the table as well. And they're each telling their stories at the table, going around, and this this man who was a Buddhist before is telling the story about how he spent 10 years in a ashram and took a vow of silence. So he's telling about the story, he's about to go in the meditation, and as he's telling the story, this Holocaust survivor, she's at the table, and she says, and like she mumbles, the Holocaust was good, and the ashram was evil. And the guy ignored it, like an older lady, she's a Holocaust survivor, her husband had died, she had no children, I'm not going to say anything. And then he keeps telling the story about how he was quiet and how what he did, and he meditated, and then she says again, the Holocaust was good, and the ashram was evil. So at this point, the guy can't hold himself back. He says, "Ma'am," he's like, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but how could you say that? How could you say that the Holocaust was good and the ashram was evil? So listen to her answer. This is so beautiful. It's so deep. This is the answer that I believe Avraham Avinu would give. Ready? She says, before the Holocaust happened, we knew that we would lose all of our books. She's like, so my sister memorized the Sefer Tehillim so that there will be someone there to say Tehillim when no one's saying Tehillim. She's like, my friend across the street, she memorized the Sefer Rut so that someone would read Sefer Rut on Shavuot. and this one memorized this, and this one did that. And the Holocaust created a reality where we were forced to think about how are we going to care for the people around us. And you sat for 10 years selfishly thinking about yourself. She's like, that's evil. You want to know what evil is? Evil is narcissism. Evil is when you can only think about yourself. That was Sodom. Sodom was an evil place. I'm going to take a person who needs help. I'm going to cut his legs off. You need a drink. I'm going to give you salt. Because it's all about this harsh, Darwinian thinking that the survival of the fittest, that's all that there is. And if you can't survive, you should die. We reject that idea. We reject Darwinism in that regard. We reject the idea that weak people should not be taken care of. We have a chiyuv, a responsibility to love humanity. You want to know why the world is broken today? Because on some level, we're not in an ashram, right? But we have a little thing called a mini ashram that we take ourselves. We're silently sitting there by ourselves, losing moments of time to care for the world around us. My friends, wake up. The world is falling apart. And the only way we could put it back together is if each of us feels a sense of responsibility to, at the very least, love the people around us. You can't love your neighbor, fine. What about your spouse? What about your sibling? What about your parents? What about your cousin? What about your uncle, your aunt? Find someone that you're going to use as an opportunity to develop yourself into becoming a lover and a giver. Are you going to be the person that when God says, hey, I want to talk to you, say, yeah, let's just talk the whole entire time? You think God wants that? He's an infinite being. He wants to visit someone who's going to ignore him because that person would rather see the beauty of a tangible person and find the godliness buried in them. Wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom. May we live our lives filled with bracha, nachat, shefa, and everything that we need to accomplish our unique mission, but with the recognition that we bring the people around us with us, that we see the beauty in every single human being, that we see every moment as sacred and precious to give back to the world around us. In this way, I believe we bring Mashiach. This is what makes Judaism so different. This is why so many people are enthralled by Abraham's message. Love humanity first, and then you'll find God. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much, everybody.
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Have an amazing Shabbat. Kol Tuv.